All right, guys. So our next topic here is a two-parter, which I'm excited for one of them in particular here, and it's we've got some new details on a second quote-unquote prequel series for Game of Thrones coming out, and a Game of Thrones animated series of some sort being in the works. And I'm more excited about the former there because the proposed prequel that they're doing is Tales of Dunk and Egg, and if you haven't read like the source material for Sir Duncan the Tall and Egg, which is Aegon, uh, it's great. Like Aegon Targaryen, rather, it's like Kid Aegon. It's great stuff, man. I love these books. These are one of the few books that like I've actually like. I technically didn't read them. I audiobooked them, if I'm going to be honest. But either way, they're like I love them because I'm not the biggest like I like a lot of Star Wars books. I'm not the biggest reader out there. Like I don't really like sitting down and reading. I'm more of an active kind. I got to do stuff. You know what I mean? And but I love audiobooks because it's a great middle ground for me because I can still do things while listening to them. It's like I've always had trouble sitting down and just reading a book because like I got ADHD. Like I got to be doing something. Like, and if I'm reading a book, that's not enough. Like I my mind just I got to be doing something. But I loved these the tales of Dunk and Egg, if you will. They're great stories, and people have been like pretty much pining and suggesting that they should. Back when Game of Thrones was on, still like before the fallout with half the fandom, with how the series ended. Everybody was saying like just do it, do Dunk and Egg, dude, do Dunk and Egg. And it looks like they're gonna finally do Dunk and Egg. And like I was telling John off camera that like it makes so much more sense for them to do something in regards to Dunk and Egg because like just like the original Game of Thrones series, all of the content is like there. Like you literally can just adapt what already exists. Sure, it's not gonna be Benioff and Weiss doing it or anything, who was like really good at adapting the original books and everything, but it's already there. You know what I mean? With this with the other one that they actually have greenlit already, the what is it? The blood the dragon. What's it called? Yeah, the prequel. It's called like Fire and Blood, or what is it called? What are they calling it? House of Blood. It's about the
House of
Targaryens.
something.
Yeah, I forget what it's even called right now. I think it says on the other article, just so I'm not like sound like an idiot. I just can't remember what they keep trying to call this thing. But either way, like that story for what they're doing there with Targaryens, like technically speaking, isn't done. Like the excerpts that they're going off of, the actual source material that they're going off of for that series is from the book Fire and Blood. And that is more of like it's more similar to like the Similarian for Lord of the Rings. Like it's just like a group of like information about specific events as opposed to a story. The Dunk and Egg stuff that pre-exists right now in book form is literally stories, like pretty much scripted stories. Like they're there. The content is there for the Fire and Blood thing or whatever they're doing, whatever they're calling the damn show.
For House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon. There it is. Yeah, that's based on the Fire and Blood stuff in that book, and that isn't scripted stuff. That's like someone that's pretty much exposition dumping the whole thing. Like for the most part, that's what that is. So they have to develop a hell of a lot more for that show than they do for Dunk and Egg, and Dunk and Egg is great stuff. So like I'm really excited to see that. And with this, there's still very little information on whether or not this animated series thing is even going to happen. And my thoughts between just the announcement of the Dunk and Egg prequel being in development, then they're wanting to do this animated series in development. All this is HBO desperately trying to get back that 51% of subscribers they lost when Game of Thrones ended. Like, which they should have had this animated thing ready to drop as soon as Game of Thrones ended. They knew how impactful Game of Thrones was to their subscriber count because they knew what their subscribers were prior to Game of Thrones, and they saw where it was at during Game of Thrones. So for them to be surprised about it now, you shouldn't be. Like they had all the data they needed. Like they should have known well in advance. Like we really need to have something Game of Thrones related available. Like right when this drops. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, I'm sure I'm not gonna like blame them because like losing 51% of like your targeted demographic of subscribers, no one probably would have ever predicted that by any means. But at the same time, it's like have a little foresight. Like, I don't know. It's the most popular television franchise literally like ever in existence. Maybe have something to follow that up immediately. But that's just me.
Well, and I mean, it's debatable. I think it's debatable as to how well a animated series would have held the audience for it. I definitely
That's
would have
true.
held some.
I mainly bring
Um,
that up because it would have been easy for them to have out.
oh, definitely.
You know
No,
what I
no,
mean?
I agree with you. I agree. If they could have tied it in some way that enticed people to give an I can't say that, it's a tongue twister.
Mhm.
An animated series a try, then yeah, then that would have I think it could have worked. I think the bigger thing is like you were saying, like, how did they not anticipate what was gonna happen? I'm sure that they had numbers and trends showing that every time a season of Game of Thrones ended,
Oh, yeah.
subscribers dropped off by X numbers or X
Mhm.
percentage. And to think that when the series ended, that people might, jump off at an even greater clip is not it doesn't take a genius to figure that out.
No, yeah, especially when, like, they have all that. They have those analytics, that's, like, readily available information. Like,
Sure.
so I'm just more again, though, we were kinda joking, like, off camera, like, this is, like, Warner Brothers, who doesn't seem to have the best track record when it comes to planning things if you wanna look at the DC universe as an example, and I love Warner Brothers. They got some great content. HBO's got some great content. I don't know about their management though. It hasn't been
Yeah.
super well executed. Not that I could do any better. Like obviously, I'm not saying that. I'm just a third party observer here. Like, but
Yeah.
I just feel like you could have a
So
little foresight.
I think all of this is, all this also, I think we've talked about before, but is I think Warner Brothers has been kind of in disarray ever since it was first mentioned that AT&T was going to buy them. And I think,
Mhm.
I think that they've been, I don't know what the right word is, they've been managing, or they've been green lighting. They've been running their company scared. Those that are in charge
Mhm.
have been running the company scared ever since they heard, or they first got wind of the fact that AT&T may be purchasing them, and they've been so worried about doing something wrong or giving their new corporate overlords reason to get rid of them, that they just that they've ended up stumbling and making a bunch of mistakes, and providing those same excuses, or the same rationale to get rid of them that they were trying so desperately to avoid. That's purely conjecture on my part. It
Oh,
just
right.
I have to come up with something in my head to explain why almost everything WB does nowadays seems to go off the rail in some form or fashion. There's very few things that you look at the history of the company, and the history of the studio, and it's been so good. They've produced so many wonderful and excellent, not just individual programs, but series as a whole. They've done films and TV and so much good. And you just look at the past 5 years and you go, what in the world is going on over there? So
Yeah, it's a big question mark. It is just like, well, what happened? Who's running that show? And like to your point, that's when the AT&T stuff happened. This has been
yeah,
in the last 5 years, so I'm sure it's had an effect. Whether or not it's like the effect, who knows? But it
sure.
definitely hasn't helped anything. I guess. Like, who's to say though? It could just be I don't know. I just go back to the whole debacle with Justice League when it came out, and like the movie wasn't ready to come out, and it literally got pushed and forced to come out in December just so the people in the corporate boardrooms got their bonus.
Yeah,
Like that's the only reason that movie came out in December in 2016 was because it needed to come out before the end of the year so that they got their bonuses. It
yeah.
didn't matter if the movie was good. They knew the movie wasn't good. Everybody knew it once they saw the movie. It wasn't good. But they got their bonuses out of it, so that's all that really mattered, and then half of them got fired because that's when the AT&T shit happened, so
Yeah,
which is why they needed their bonuses because they knew they were gonna lose their jobs come the first of the
yeah,
year. So, to your point, it makes a lot of sense. Like, that's when kinda when a lot of very notable things got derailed, so but hopefully, as far as HBO goes, they've always been, like, really good as far as content goes, and they don't have as much as the I don't know, publicized drama that WB and like DC has really had. Maybe because it's arguably not as like popular in the fandom as like DC is. DC's a big thing, so like obviously it's going to be under a lot more scrutiny. But I mean, HBO's always been like the king of content, really. So I'm hoping they can get back to that. And I loved Game of Thrones. I mean, I thought the ending was rushed and everything, but that was like my favorite show for the longest time. So I'm excited.
Do you think I mean, this is again pure speculation, but do you think that an animated series and a couple new do you think the prequel series that they're doing, House of Dragon, and this other series that they may do, and if they do an anime, do you think that's enough to get the fandom back? Um, do you think it will ever reach the heights that it reached? You know, when you're talking like the Red Wedding and those types of, I mean that show was it permeated every corner of the social consciousness, and it was just everywhere. I don't know if the ending and the time that's passed since has soured people on the franchise. To be fair, I also felt that same way about Star Wars, and you've seen what having a excellent series in The Mandalorian has done to rejuvenate and revitalize that fandom and that series. So maybe I'm answering my own question.
That was going to be my answer. Star Wars was going to be my example, like literally, because I was going to say something along the lines of you could be looking at a prequel situation, like the Star Wars prequels, to where there was like a big surge up front of just people being excited that it's back, and then from that point on, it's going to be whether or not it's good, and that's, I mean, like all things, and then. I mean, elsewise, as long as it is good, it will have the Mandalorian effect on it. Because even though the fandom is so divided, like Star Wars has been over the last couple of years, you get that one piece of content that can essentially unite the fandom. That one piece that both the left and the right of the Star Wars out there can just both come and acknowledge its greatness in some way. Then yes. It will be successful. The animated one's a little bit more niche, though, like, because animation is always a bit more niche, but it really just depends. Because I mean, you have these other oddballs out there, like a Pixar, who can pretty much crap out gold, despite there being they're just an animation studio. Whereas, you have these other animation studios that don't hit those heights. So it's kind of up in the air with the animated. Like, I'm even on the fence about the animated one because, like, again, there's no information on it. I love the lore behind the whole Game of Thrones world, so like I will watch it. Like I don't like I'm not split on it. That's just like do with the Star Wars thing. Like I don't care. Like I didn't like The Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker, but I'm still gonna watch anything you put that label on. I don't care. I like the stuff. Like I like the lore, and I'll hold out in hopes that it's gonna be something as good as the original trilogy or the Mandalorian or anything or the Old Republic. I'm willing to give it all a shot, like, cause it's guys. So I hope people do the same. I think most people probably do the same, but there's always that, that other group out there who's just, once they decide that hating it is cool, they're always going to hate it. Kind of like the prequels. Like, even people now still hate the prequels. It just doesn't matter. They've always hated them. They're going to hate them, which is fine. You're totally allowed, but this is what it is. So.
My biggest fear with Game of Thrones specifically is that kind of like Star Wars. At least you had the original trilogy, which most people came away from loving, and that's where their fandom has its roots in and where it started. And so you have that baseline, and then you have some dips and stuff, but it always goes back to that initial first set of that initial story, and then everybody seemed to love it, and it became a part of them. Game of Thrones, because it ended on such a divisive way. I wonder if people walked away. And by some people, I mean me specifically. I have this. I have this because I love that series so much. I can't count the number of people I told either in my job or in my family or friends, like, you got to watch Game of Thrones. Like, I know it's fantasy. I know it's not your typical thing, but you got to just give it a try. Watch the first season. If you don't like it, like, all right, I'm sorry I wasted a few hours of your life, but like, you got to give it a try. And then by the time we got to the ending, I was like, man, I wasted like many hours of not only other people's lives, my own life, because I was so disheartened by the way it ended.
I hear you.
And I want it back. I want to be in that world, and I want to be in it when it was good and when I really liked it. And so I'm curious if if they can get it back.
The only thing I would say to that is, and what I tell most people, because I know what I can kind of equate to that scenario is like people worried about reboots, and they're always like, oh, but it's gonna ruin the original if they remake it. It's like, you know what? No, it doesn't, because even though you didn't like how it ended, it doesn't change the fact that there was all that good stuff that you loved leading up to it. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, all that stuff still there. The first 6 seasons, you know, it was all good. It was just the last couple episodes that were bad, you know? Like, for
Yeah.
most people. So the show is still, as a whole, an excellent television show, if not the best ever made. You know what I mean? Like, you can't take away from it just because, like, it got rushed. And I'm gonna be the first to admit, I'm not like I said, I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan. I love Game of Thrones. I love the lore. I did not hate it. Like, I thought it was fine. Like, the ending was fine. It was just rushed. Like, what they did, I don't have a problem with. It's how they did it that I have a problem with. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, it was just like Christopher Nolan said, man. You go to bed working for the best, you know, production company, and you wake up working for the worst streaming service. It's the same concept with Game of Thrones. It's like you go to bed and Daenerys is great, and then you wake up and she's Cersei. Like, it was that quick. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was like things like that were just like, it was not a left field. It was just the way they fucking introduced everything and just made it happen. It was just like, she went to bed a good guy and woke up a bad guy.
Yeah.
like it was like, okay, you had years and years and years to build up to it, and you put the little pepperings in there every once in a while, but you never leaned into it to this degree until all of a sudden. Like, I don't know. Story for another time. I'm excited for the shows though, because I love Game of Thrones. God damn it! I just hope it's good. But like you, I hope they have, and which is another reason I was kind of saying, like, it kind of went off the rails when Dan and Dave didn't have the actual source material there. So that's why I was like, with Dunk and Egg, the source material is there, and the source material is what is really good. And it's like, we kind of saw with evidence that once anyone had to deviate from that source material to the degree of like Dan and Dave, even when they didn't have the books there anymore to guide them, the show suffered. Like, it straight up
Yeah.
suffered. It wasn't as good as it was before. So,
Yeah.
because everything George R.R. Martin wrote in those damn books is great, is gold. Like, so when you adapt that, it will work. When you deviate from it, yeah, it could still be great. There's plenty of adaptations that are great, but that's just the only, that's what I'm worried about, is that situation again. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yep.
I'm excited for it though. So, question is, guys, what do you think? Are you excited about the game? Are you excited about the animated series, for one? Do you think that'll work? And what kind of animation style do you think they're actually going to do with that? Because HBO has had some weird relationships. I mean, you had the animated Spawn TV series from back in the day, which was great, but it was, you know, very 2D, almost anime style, you know, thing going on. And then, like, they haven't really had anything with, at least that I can remember, your more, I don't know, popularized 3D animation. They haven't really had anything like that. So do you think they're going to go that route? And are you excited for the Dunk and Egg thing? Because I really hope that comes to fruition, because that stuff is awesome. If you haven't checked out those books, go and check those out. The books with Sir Duncan the Tall and Egg, and they're great books. So go check it out and let us know what you think down in the comment section below.